listening to the Thornapple Valley Church podcast. Thank you for joining us. Our hope is for you to be encouraged and to connect with God during this message. If you'd like to know more about Thornapple Valley Church, visit tvcweb.com.
Some of you know the Old Testament well enough to know of the prophet named Elisha, and you may even know the story of part of his life. Elisha, God used in many different ways, but at one point, because of what he was doing, he had ticked off a king, the king of Aram, and he was so angry with him and so upset that he decided when he found out the city that he was in, that he was going to send his entire army to take out one guy, basically to take out one guy, because he was so filled with rage over Elisha. And so what happens is the next morning, after this army arrives, remember this was back when cities were walled, so there's a wall all the way around the city, and when the army arrives there in the night, the next morning, Elisha's servant, whose name is Gehazi, gets up, goes out for Starbucks or whatever, but he goes up on the wall, and he sees the army, and he knows instantly, it's like they're as good as dead. Now let's just look at this story from actual scripture, and this is 2 Kings chapter 6. It says, when the servant, that was Gehazi, the man of God, Elisha, got up and went out early the next morning, an army with horses and chariots had surrounded the city. And he said, oh no, my Lord, what shall we do? And that's what Gehazi said. Now, I've always sort of read this, that he doesn't say it just like that. It's more like, oh my Lord, what are we going to do? Anybody ever said that? Oh my Lord, what are we going to do? He says. And then Elisha answers him and says, don't be afraid, because those who are with us are more than those who are with them. And then Elisha prayed, open his eyes. He's talking about Gehazi. Open his eyes, Lord, so that he may see. And then the Lord opened the servant's eyes, and he looked and saw the hills full of horses and chariots of fire all around Elisha. This is such an amazing story, because here's a guy that looks out and goes, we're dead. This is it. We're dead. We're going to die. This whole army has come to destroy just us and me, only because I'm your servant, and we're going to die. And Elisha prays for him so that he will see. And the place is surrounded by an angelic army, horses and chariots of fire. An amazing, amazing thing happens. Now, I don't know how you resonate with this story, but I find that I relate more not to Elisha the prophet and his seeing the angelic armies, but I relate more to Gehazi, and I find myself far more often saying, oh my Lord, what are we going to do? Anybody know what I'm talking about? It's like instead of going, they that are for us are more than they that are against us, just relax, God's got it. I tend to be one of those people that's, oh my gosh, I don't know how we're going to deal with this. I don't know what's going to happen. Some of you have heard me talk about a time in my life. This was back in the mid-'80s, and I had severe back pain, and we couldn't figure it out. And finally, the doctor said, I want to admit you and run some tests, and I think it would be really good for you. And so I'm in the hospital, and while I'm in the hospital, an intern comes into my room, and he says, oh, by the way, have you heard about your insurance company? And I said, what about my insurance company? He said, well, it went bankrupt. And I had found this great deal on a small businessman's insurance company that was going to really save me a lot of money. And you ever saved money and then it cost you thousands and thousands and thousands? Well, that was it. And I was like, oh my Lord, what are we going to do? You know, it was a Gehazi moment. And then we found out that Anne, who was pregnant at the time, was going to have a C-section, and so that was going to be a surgery, and that was many thousands of dollars, and I'm in pain, and I'm in debt, and I'm going deeper in debt, and there is no way around it. There's no way I'm going to be able to cover this. And so I checked myself out of the hospital. I went home, I climbed into bed, and I laid there, and I tried to shut out the world. I had it with the world. Everything was conspiring against me, and I don't know if it was the first day. I think it was the first day. It may have been the second, though, that Anne, I think, just grew weary of my whining, and she came into the bedroom, got up on the bed, climbed up on top of me, a man with back pain. She climbed up on top of, and she sat on me and began to preach in my face with a finger that was like about that long, right? And she said, you need to stop this complaining, and you need to start trusting God and believing that He is going to take care of us, because He will, and He'll meet our needs. And I'm like, shut up. I didn't really say that. I'm smarter than that. You know, you all think that I write these talks out and I work out. I don't. I just write down what she preaches to me, and then I come in here and give them to you. That's how it goes. But it's an interesting thing, because if I was deep in this dark hole, and if you would have asked me then, why are you in this place of despair? I would have told you, here's what I would have said. Because of the external circumstances in my life, it just seems like everything is conspiring against me. I'm in pain, I'm in debt, and I'm in deep debt. Back then, the church was quite young, and we had no money. We were living from paycheck to paycheck, and we were a single income family, and we had kids, and we were expecting our fourth, and it was like all these things, all these terrible things, and I would have said, that's the reason I'm in such a place of despair. But now in retrospect, when I look back, what I've learned about myself, and I think about humans in general, is that the reason I was in despair didn't have to do with the circumstances. I'll tell you what it had to do with. It had to do with control. I had lost control. And I like control. Anybody know what I'm talking about? I like to know that I'm in control and that I have things figured out and that it's going to be okay. You think about it. I don't think that it's just me that has control issues. I think you do too. In fact, let me just ask you a question. You think you're a control freak? No, last night in the service, somebody went, yeah. I was like, wow. Usually people aren't proud of it, but this person was like, that's who I am. You think you're a control freak? Do you think you are? I know a lot of you are going, I don't think so. Let's just take a test, all right? Let's take a test. On the way in, you were handed a folder, a handout, and on the back of it, you'll see it says the CFT. Why don't you grab that, because you're going to use that. It says the CFT. That stands for the control freak test. And this is what we're going to do. By the way, I did not write this up. I got it out of a psychology magazine. So this is going to help you understand where you end on the spectrum of being a control freak. Now, you'll see the key at the top. So there are 10 rows that go 1 through 5. And you're going to answer. So if I ask a question, you say, you know what, that rarely or never happens, that would be a 1. If you would say this happens very often, it would be a 5. If you say it happens sometimes, and this is where people are going to want to lie, so just be honest, all right? If it happens sometimes, that is the number what? 3. That's what you would circle. So by the time you're done, you will have circled one number in each row, and then you'll tally all those columns up, and we'll see where you are in this thing. So you ready to do this? Let's jump in, and we'll start with the first one. Oops. Let's try to go back. There we are. Here's a question. Do you help other people drive? Do you tell them what route to take, when to turn, where to park, and remind them that the traffic light has changed? It's green. Do you do that? If you do that often or very often, you're a 5. If you do that sometimes, you are a what? A 3. So be honest, all right? Just be honest about this. Circle that one in that first row. Don't talk about it. Just be honest. Don't be elbowing people next to you. All right, here's the second question. Do you devote a lot of attention and energy to keeping your personal environment organized? In other words, are you kind of a neat freak? All right, 1 to 5. Mark it down. Mark it down. See where you're at. Here's question number 3. Do you give people a lot of shoulds and oughts, unsolicited advice, suggestions, and constructive criticism like you should do this and you ought to do that? Do you do that? Now, here's where you need to be honest. If you do it sometimes, what do you circle? See, some of you now are going, 1. All right. Here's the fourth one. Do you have lots of personal rules and routines and rituals and ceremonies? 1 through 5. What about you? Here's question number 5. Are you the one who takes over and orders other people around when the situation seems confused? I knew how to answer this one immediately. When it seems like there's nobody leading, I walk into that void and I start to lead, baby. So I would have been a 5 in that. What are you? Question number 6. Do you dislike depending on others, accepting help from them, or allowing them to do things for you? 1 through 5. 1 through 5. Question number 7, do you insist on being right? Do you insist on having things done your way or having the final word? And I know some of you are like, no, and that's the final word in this thing, all right? Number 8, do you overplan simple activities? Some of you are elbowing each other. No need for that. Just, this is about you. Number 9, do you find it difficult to admit making mistakes, being wrong, or misinformed about something or acknowledging that you've changed your mind. Is it hard for you to do that? Just be honest about it. Final question, number 10. Do you become angry, irritable, or anxious when someone or something makes you late? When you don't start on time or things don't go according to plan? Those are the questions, 1 through 5. Now, if you've got them, now what you do is you add the columns up. Get your phone out if you need a calculator. This is simple math, but if you need a calculator, get it out. Take your shoes off, use your toes, add up your total score. Each column, and then the final score, and then I'm going to show you what that looks like, all right? Just want to give you a little time to do that. I know some of you are like 7, 8, 9. If you need your phone, get it out. Do it real quick. It's quite a talkative group in here, I've noticed. Okay, hopefully you've made it. So let's just look at what happens with the score. So if you got a 40, between 41 and 50, you are a control freak, all right? If you got between 41 and 50, you're a control freak. If you got 31 to 40, you probably have some control issues, which I know is going to be a lot of people in here. 21 to 30, if you added it up and it was between 21 and 30, you know what? You can live and let live. That's pretty good. Oh, I didn't put the bottom one. If you said you were between 10 and 20, really that just means you're stinking lying, all right? Now, just for, disclosure here, that's not what it was in the magazine. Actually, it said, "Are you being honest?" But I just interpreted it for what it was, all right? You're lying. All right, now, if you're a control freak, I'm not going to ask you to identify yourself. I don't want to embarrass you. I'm just going to say, if you're next to a control freak, would you lift your hand up and just point at them? It's an interesting thing, really, when you think about this. This is quite revealing. Because a lot of people think that they're not people with control issues. But I would actually say, regardless of where your score was, even if you're in the you can live and let live, I would say that all of us wrestle at some level with control issues. Not because we're necessarily twisted or warped or, out of line. It's because we're human. This is a human thing. You think about it. We like to be in control. Do you agree with that? Okay, nobody's answering me. We like to be in control. Do you agree with that? Yeah, I mean, we do. You think about this. Go all the way back to creation. In the Garden of Eden, God says to Adam and Eve, he says, you can eat anything in the garden. It's all there. It's yours. It's an amazing, wonderful place. Just don't eat from one tree. And what did they do? They went straight to that tree because they wanted control. I mean, if you don't think this is true about human beings, you've never watched toddlers. Seriously, you think about this. If toddlers grew fast enough that toddlers had adult bodies, we would all be living in fear of being murdered on a regular basis. Is it true? It really is. And nobody teaches toddlers to be selfish, to grab something from somebody else and to hoard it to themselves. They have this innate in them. They want control. All of us, we want control. The only problem, of course, is that the vast, vast majority of things in life are not in your control. In fact, almost everything in your life is not really, even though you may think you're in control, it's not really in your control. I mean, let's just talk about economics. You say, I'm going to work hard, I'm going to make money, I'm going to do all these things. But the economy of the world is not in your control. You know that. And and some of you know this because you've been through it in 08 and 09. You can lose money like that. You can blink your eye and lose half or 60% or more of your savings of what you depend on for when you retire. It can go that fast. You think you have it all figured out. You think your investments are great, but you are not in control. You want to know another one? Is relationships. And I know people will say, well, in relationships, I only let people treat me the way I want them to treat me. No, you're nuts. That is not true. You can't control how people treat you. I mean, my gosh, Jesus Christ comes, heals the sick, raises the dead, gives sight to the blind, treats people with dignity and courage and love, and does nothing but good. And what do people do? They plot to kill him. You think you can control how people treat you? You really think that? In the end, you can't. And this is something I think a lot of people don't understand, because we get in relationships with somebody and think, well, I'm married to them, and I understand that if I treat them right, then they're going to treat me right. That is not always true. And you know that. And you know that just because someone has treated you well doesn't mean that you always treat them well. We are human beings, and that is not in your control. And those two things are massive, but they're a drop in the bucket to all there is in life. Just the random circumstances of life, death and accidents and the difficult things that come to us, and you name it, it's out there. I mean, I don't think I'd be out of line to say that among the people who hear this talk this weekend at our campuses and online and so forth, you know, the thousands of people that hear it, honestly, I think it's not unreasonable to say multiple cars will break down in the next week, and it may be yours. And some of you are like, dude, that's so negative. No, that's just life. Is that true? And you have no control over that. You may go out to your parking lot, you know, the parking lot after the service today, and it won't start. I prophesy now. There will be some of you. No, I'm not saying that really. I'm just joking, all right? But you have no control. There's so much stuff in life that you have no control. So the obvious question, of course, is, what do I have control over? I mean, seriously, what do I have control over? That list is so short, it's unbelievable. Primarily, what you have control over is your character. Your character. How you respond to all the things that happen in life that you have no control over. That you do have control over. You can't control how people treat you. You can set up boundaries, and you can do all kinds of good things that will be helpful to you, but in the end, you can't control them. You can sometimes influence circumstances or situations, but you cannot control them. But you can control how you respond when they do happen. Would you agree with that? That you have control of. And this is what I want you to hear this weekend, because to me this is so important. That will determine whether you live as a victim or a joyful person. Don't miss that. That's really important, okay? How you respond to what you can't control determines whether you live your life as a victim or as a joyful person. You have that kind of influence on what you will be based on how you respond to the things that you have no control over. And everybody, the deal is, you think about this, everybody lives with pain. I know some of you, you think you're an exception to the rule. You think nobody has it like you do. Can I just say to you, you're not an exception to the rule, you're the rule. Everybody has pain. Now, obviously, we look at some people and their lot seems to be worse in life than other people's. But the truth is pain. And when you're in pain, it doesn't matter how severe it is compared to somebody else. When you're in pain, you're in pain. When you're depressed, you're depressed. Doesn't matter if you're a depressed rich person or a depressed poor person. Pain is pain. And you are not the exception. You are the rule. Everybody struggles with this. Everybody lives with problems and pain. And the people who respond to it, their character response to the pain in their life determines whether they continue on in a worse way as a victim, or whether they are unconquered and live as a person of joy. Some of us, this is what you need to hear, because you're living as a victim these days. You walk around and everything in your life is like, why is this happening? Why is this happening? It's so terrible, it's so terrible, it's so terrible. And all you do is respond as a victim, but you have the choice in how you respond. And it will determine whether you live as a victim or whether you live as a joyful person, because when you respond with joy, you can actually influence some of the circumstances around you. You know, one of the most beautiful examples of this that I've had in my life started from birth and up well into my adult life. And it was my mom. I've talked about my mom before. My mom was diagnosed with MS 3 months after I was born, multiple sclerosis, which is such a ravaging disease. It's got so much variety in it and how it affects people, but it hit Mom really hard at first, and I have no memory of this because I was just a baby being passed around to different family members, but at first they said she was going to die, and then they said she'd be blind, and they said she'd never walk, and she came back from a lot of that stuff, and as a child, my memory of my mom was she was able to walk and even sometimes drive. Dad rigged up hand controls for her in the car because she couldn't use her legs well enough, and she would use a walker or cane, and she lived many years being able to get around in a limited way with that, but she was exhausted all the time. She lost so much. And then when I was an adult, when we had our first child, after Ann and I had our first child, right after he was born, Mom lost complete mobility. She could not get out of bed. She could not move herself from the waist down. She just had nothing there, and she had no strength in her upper body, and she just lost everything. Now, I don't want to paint her as a perfect person, but she did this interesting thing. She lost more than most people lose in their adult life until they become very old and disabled. She lost that almost all of her adult life. And she chose, it's such an amazing thing, she just chose to come at life from a joy perspective, to just delight in the things that were happening around her. She was such an amazing person. I mean, she's single by this time when she's completely immobile now, and she can't even take care of herself hardly. And she's living in a mobile home in a trailer park over in Howell, Michigan, where she was. And I would go to visit my mom, and she'd be there. She'd be in that hospital. She didn't have the door locked because, people came. They had to be able to come in. And so I'd just walk in, and I'd bring fast food. And she'd look at it, and she'd go, "Oh, you brought McDonald's? You'd think it was French cuisine, that I was bringing in and setting before." And she'd be like, "This is so good. Oh, I so love it when you come over." And sometimes I'm like, "Stop. You're too happy. You're making me sick," right? But it was amazing. She just came at life with a joyful perspective. She chose to see it that way. She'd look out the window and see the birds. People put a bird feeder up for her, and she'd fill it with seed, and she would watch that. And so in the latter years of my mom's life, she came to live with us, and we built an addition on her house for her. And Ann kind of oversaw it, and she put all these windows, and she said, "I want your mom to be able to see outside. I want her to see nature and life and the birds and everything." We hung all these feeders up and put feed out for animals and stuff. And Mom just would lay in that hospital bed, and she'd go, "Oh, that's so beautiful. Look at this, look at this." She'd say, "Look at this, it's so beautiful." And she did that all the time. She wasn't perfect, but she did that all the time. And even when she was, near the end, when she was losing some of her cognitive ability, like she wouldn't be able to recall the name of something. I remember one time she said, Jeff, come here. And so I go in by her bed, and she goes, look at that. And she couldn't think of the name of it. It was when you look out the back, there's kind of a hill that goes up, and there was a deer just feeding up on the hill. It was real pretty. And she goes, "Look at that." She couldn't think of the word deer. She goes, look at that beautiful venison." And I was like, "Yeah, Mom, yum." She just saw beauty. And I think sometimes we need people in our lives like my mom who just remind us of how important it is. You have a choice. Not much in your life do you really have control of. If you think you're in control, you're mostly living in an imaginary world. You don't have control of much in your life, but you do have control of your responses. You have control of your character, of how you respond to things, how you deal with things. And it's a choice that you make. And I've been quoting this thing lately that I so appreciate. And I'm not sure, maybe this is not working. You may have to bring up that, thanks. Nope, what I'm looking for is a quote, "We make our choices." There we go, thank you. We make our choices, and then say it with me, our choices make us. And I think there's so much truth in that. Mom taught me, other people have taught me, that how I respond to things in life determines whether I'm a victim or whether I'm a person of joy. And I know I haven't said anything that you don't know, and I know really as I talk about this, you're kind of like, I know all this, I hear it. But here's my observation, maybe you're different than me. I just need to be reminded of this a lot. A lot. Because some circumstance happens in my life, and I'm suddenly like, "Oh my gosh, why is this happening to me?" And I move to victim status very quickly. And my response determines whether or not I live with a sense of joy and anticipation of life, or whether I'm just like, I got to get through the day, or if I can just get through this week or this season or whatever it is. Or when I'm living fully and living and experiencing the joy and the wonder of life around me, my grandchildren and my children and people in life, it's determined by choices that I make. And here's the truth. There are many ways that you can respond with character to life, and I thought about which thing I talk about, and I wanted to narrow this down to one thing. You can respond by whether you tell the truth or lie. Your character determines how if you treat people kindly or rudely, all those things are important, but I want to narrow this down to just one thing. I believe, because see, I want us all to have happy holidays. I know some of you are in pain and struggling, but I think you can still have some happiness in the holidays, and I'm going to narrow it down to just one thing, all right? Here's the key. You control how you talk in response to what you can't control. You control how you speak, and that is profound. How you speak, the words you say, whether you're complaining and whining or whether you're speaking joy-filled words, they have a profound impact. They can't always fix the stuff in your life, but they determine in many ways whether you live as a victim or whether you live with joy. And you can control your tongue. You can, in fact, turn to the person next to you and just look at them and say, you can control your tongue, and you should. Some of you are enjoying that. And I know some of you are going, but I can't. Stuff just pops out of my mouth. No, it doesn't. You say it. You speak it. You do have control over the words that come out of your mouth. You have control. And a lot of you are like me. I understand that I need to get better at this. I want to work at this, but this is work. Because we very easily forget sometimes that our response to circumstances is profoundly important on how we live, as a victim or as a person with joy. And I want to repeat this. What you say is going to have direct impact on whether you live as a victim or a joyful person. Now, we know it won't necessarily, a few happy words won't stop pain. They won't change necessarily how you're feeling in the moment. I've come to the conclusion that you can't always control your emotions. Have you noticed that? I think sometimes we feel guilty because we can't, but sometimes you just wake up and you're depressed. You don't even know why. Sometimes you get angry, circumstances happen. You can't always control how you feel about things. You can't. But you can control what you say no matter how you feel. Now, there's power in that. There's enormous power in that. And joy-filled words, they can't control everything around you, but what they can do is they influence you in such a way that if you're a downward spiral and you determine I'm going to speak words of life and joy, they bump it up a little. They're not going to make it perfect, but they bump it up a little. And the more you speak, the more they bump it up. Whereas if you stay a victim, you just keep going down. You have a choice in this. You can control your tongue. Now, I'm not saying it's easy, but it is an incredibly important thing. And this is what the Bible says. If you think the tongue's not important, it really is. Scripture says, can we have that next one? Thank you. The tongue has the power. You want to put a battery in it? Whoops. You know what? Maybe it's not going to, I threw it to you, and yeah. All right. So we're going to move on from the Three Stooges. Back one slide, please. Back one slide. There you go. The Bible says the tongue has the power of, say it out loud, life and death. Now, that's profound. It doesn't mean that you're going to stab people and kill them with your tongue. It doesn't mean you're going to raise the dead with your tongue necessarily. What it means is every time you speak, it moves something a little closer to life or to death. And the way James writes about it is profound. Let's look at this portion of Scripture in the book of James. Can you bring that next slide up for me, please? Thank you. He writes, this is pretty powerful. He says, we all stumble in many ways, and anyone who's never at fault in what they say is perfect. That's wild, just from your tongue. He says they're able to keep their whole body in check. And when we put bits in the mouths of horses to make them obey us, we can turn the whole animal. Or take ships as an example. Although they are so large and are driven by strong winds, it says they're steered by a very small rudder wherever the pilot wants to go. Likewise, now he gets real serious. The tongue is a small part of the body, but it makes great boasts. Consider what a great forest is set on fire by a small spark. The tongue's also a fire, a world of evil among the parts of the body, and it corrupts the whole body, sets the whole course of one's life on fire. Look at this, and is set on fire itself by hell. I mean, wow, you have a demon in your mouth, your tongue. It has profound power, profound influence. And while I don't believe that if we change it and just bring out a few happy words, it's going to make everything perfect in our lives, I do believe, and I believe this with all my heart, that it has a massive impact on whether you live as a victim or a person who's living joyfully. Do you want to have happy holidays? I think you do. And I think you don't understand maybe that it's not just dependent on the exigent circumstances of your life. It's dependent on how you respond to those things out of your control. And when you speak words, and you make them words of life, and you choose not to speak words of death, it changes everything. This is what Scripture says in Deuteronomy. Let's bring that up. If we could, it says, "This day I call the heavens and the earth as witnesses against you, that I have set before you life and death, blessings and curses. Now," say the next two words out loud. Now choose life. Now choose life so that you and your children may live. You have a choice. You have a choice in what you say. So this is real simple this weekend. This is what I want to do. And I did this last year, and I've done this in the past. But I want to challenge you this holiday season to move beyond just wishing for happy holidays and actually doing something that can make it better. And here it is. I want to give you a 10-day challenge. 10 days without, now stop whining, okay? Some of you are already like, no. 10 days without complaint. Here's the challenge. I'm not asking you to do 6 months. I'm not asking you to do something unreasonable. Just 10 days without complaint, where you say, for the next 10 days until Christmas Day, or through Christmas Day, I will not complain. Does that sound like something that we could do? I'd say that response is about 50-50 right there. Actually, it is something that we can do. Now, I understand that we're not always going to do it right. We're going to fail sometimes. I mean, I've been working on this for the last couple weeks of my own life, and I have to tell you, I realized how important it was to have people supporting me in this, because I don't even realize half the time I'm complaining. I am such a natural at complaining. I can complain without it. It's like breathing for me. It's just coming out. Oh, this is horrible, all that stuff. And so this will require a certain level of work. And so what I'm talking about is not just not complaining, but there's two thoughts on this. Stop complaining, and then secondly, speak words of life. Speak life words. In other words, when you think it's something that you want to complain about, choose to go in the other direction, to actually speak words, but speak words that bring life, that bring encouragement, that are a blessing to somebody. And this is real simple. I'm not talking about something that you can't do. I'm talking about 10 days where you are making commitment. You're saying, I will not complain. Now, I've done this before, so I feel like I have to give this caveat, because I know that a bunch of you will say yes to this, and you're going to take this challenge. And I know you won't be perfect in it, just like I haven't been perfect and won't be perfect in the next 10 days, but you'll take the challenge. But here's the deal. When people around you call you out and say, that sounded like complaining to me, do not get defensive, because this is what people love to do. I was just speaking the truth. Come on, you know what I'm talking about. It's like you can almost always say that. It is cold, and it is miserable outside. I'm just speaking the truth. No, you were belly aching. Here's what I want you to do. Even if somebody calls you out, and I hope they do, this is part of my plan, is that I hope you'll be called out. I hope I'll be called out. But when they call you out, instead of trying to defend yourself, even if you were just speaking the truth and you just weren't saying it as complaining, which most of the time you are, but if you weren't even, just say, thank you for reminding me that I do not want to complain in this season. I am going to go 10 days without complaint. Don't whine, don't complain. So I think this is something we can do. In effect, in a moment, I'm going to ask you, if you're in on this, to lift your hand up real high. And I know not yet, hang on. I made the commitment last night, so I can't complain about you blowing this, timing on this. All right, just hang on. So this is what we're going to say in effect. This is a commitment. Can we put that next slide up? There it is. To the best of my ability. See, this is what some of you need to hear. To the best of my ability. I know some of you are going, I can't make a commitment that I know I'm probably going to break. I understand that. So it's to the best of my ability. I will not what? Complain over the next 10 days. Does that sound like something you can do? You can do that. You can do that. And if you are with me on this, hold up your hand and leave it up. If you're with me on this, hold up your hand. Come on. Some of you are like, I feel pressure to put my hand up. Now hold it up, hold it up. I want you to see something. Looks like there's a large group back here of real whiners that are like, I'm not going to change. All right. Keep your hand up. Keep your hand up. Here's why I want you to do this. I want you to look around you now. I want you to look at the people in your family. I want you to look at the people by you or around the church, people that you know. I want you to look at the hands up because I want you to call them out when you hear them complain. And I want them to call you out. All right, you can put your hand back down. I know this will not be easy. I asked, Brian was up here playing last night. So I said to Brian in a meeting after the service, I said, dude, he complained about something. I said, you're complaining? He said, well, I haven't made the commitment or something like that. And I said, you didn't lift your hand? He said, well, I'm playing the piano or whatever. So I said, oh, well, are you going to do it? Yeah. So we, back in the video room, when we had our meeting after the service, I said, lift your hand up. So he lifted his hand up. And then about a couple minutes later, he said, so I guess I'm just not speaking for the next 10 days. That's the way. Some of you feel that way. Some of you feel that way. And I fully understand that. Let me be clear on this. It's not going to be easy. But think about hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people who are walking around with a determination. I'm going to speak life. I am not going to complain. Think about the atmosphere that we can change. We can't control everything, but we can influence. And think about what you can do in your family. I believe that this is a simple thing, but it is a powerful thing. Now, I want to give you a couple things to help you. So the first thing is the ushers are going to pass out little bowls or whatever they are, and they have just a tiny little, go ahead, guys, you can just take them up and pass them out. But they just have a tiny little sticker on them that says life. I put this on the back of my phone. I asked for these. I thought they were going to be a little bigger, but they're the size of a head of a pin. Go ahead, pass them right on out. That's fine. If you want to, take one and put it on your phone. So when I very seldom leave my phone in my pocket because it annoys me, so I'll put it on the table wherever I'm at, and I just put it face down, and I see that, and it just reminds me, I'm speaking life. I'm speaking life. If you want to use this, fine. If you don't want to, no pressure on that. And then the second thing I want to do is I want to just offer you some daily support. Again, if you're interested, if you would like, you can text Life 2019 to the number 77948, and the next 10 days, starting today, you will get a text that I personally writing, and you'll get a text from me, one text a day, and at the end of 10 days of Christmas, that's it. It's over. It's not going to happen after that. And if you want it, fine. If you don't, that's fine too. It's just something I want to offer. Here's the deal. I just want to be clear on this. Even if we fail, even if we complain some, we're going to be better people for it. Because we need to think about what we do have control of versus what we don't have control of. Come on, I think it's good preaching. I'm sorry. I just think it is. That wasn't complaining. That was bragging. So that's probably sin too, but whatever it is. I think this is important stuff, and I think it's what we need to do. And I hope that you will encourage each other in families. I saw people in my life group last night. I see a guy in my life group. Ben, did you lift your hand up? Did you? You did. All right. I just want to know. So if you're in a life group with people, ask them and then challenge them. If I hear you complain, I'm calling you out, baby. And if you hear me complain, call me out. You call me out. That's right. We need that. And I know that my wife and my children and grandchildren will delight in calling me out every single time. And I want it. Because I want to speak words of life. I want to speak words that make a difference. All right. Enough said. Let's stand to our feet, and we'll close with prayer in just a second. Let me just remind you of a couple things. It's real important so that you get this. Next Saturday on the 21st, we do not have a Saturday service. We are not going to have a Saturday service the 21st. That's this coming Saturday. We will have both services on Sunday, which is the 22nd. And on that day, we have a family service. Everybody but the tiniest kids are in here. And we ask you to bring next weekend, can anybody tell me? Cookies. You got it. Good. Bring cookies. And then somebody said donuts? Awesome. If you want to cough up for donuts, fine. That's great. I mean, just bring them in my office. But bring cookies next weekend. And then a couple days after that, is Christmas Eve. And we will have 3 services here for Christmas Eve. We will have a 12:30. I think we have a slide for that. Put it up, guys. And I think you should have information in your flyer about that too. But if you don't have a slide, that's all right. Don't worry about it. But 12:30, 2 and 3:30. Yeah, 2 and 3:30. So those are service times. And what we're asking you to do is get tickets. They're free. Just go out to the bookstore as you walk out right now. Go over, get the tickets you need so that we can keep the services level. They're free. So now, God, send us out in this time with a fresh determination that we're going to take control where we have control. And we're going to speak words of life and not complain over the next 10 days. Help us, God. We need it. And we trust you too. In Jesus' name, let's say together, amen. Have a great day. You're dismissed.
Thank you for listening to the Thornapple Valley Church podcast. If you found this message encouraging, we invite you to share it. For more information, visit tvcweb.com.